Hello everyone, I'm Yvonne Chan. In support of International Women's Day 2022, Singapore's homegrown leather and craft atelier Bynd Artisan has invited a group of key business and society leaders to share their personal stories and observations about gender bias and to discuss ways to advocate for more equality in society, at the workplace, and even at home. Now, we've seen much progress in gender equality in recent years. According to the 2020 World Values Survey, which polled over 2,000 Singaporeans, only 1/5 of the male respondents agreed that a university education is more important for a boy than for a girl. And about 1/3 of male respondents believed that men make better business executives than women. The survey also showed that demography, upbringing, and cultural differences can explain the variation in receptiveness towards women's issues. Now, joining me to discuss this today, we have Sharon Chong, partner at RHT Law Asia. To her left, Wen-Hui Tan, the Director of Development Asia at Hilton. And we also have Dr. Eric Chiam, the founder of MinMed, on our panel. And rounding up our discussion today, let's welcome Rachel Lim, the co-founder of Love Bonito. Welcome, everyone. Well, it's so good to have everyone on the panel today. I want to kick off our discussion about gender bias by first asking you to share your observations about that in your respective industries. So let's start with you first, Sharon. Some of the recurring themes of gender bias, according to the latest Law Society report, was that there is a misperception that male lawyers believe that gender parity could be achieved at the expense of meritocracy. But what I found more alarming was that gender bias was being perpetuated by senior female lawyers. Tell us more about that.
Well, I think firstly we have to acknowledge that these women lawyers who are part of a different generation, they have gone through a lot and they had to sacrifice a lot to get to where they are at the moment. But I think that while we should give them credit and while we should acknowledge their efforts, we cannot close off the conversation as to the journey that they took. So I think it is human nature to think that because this is the journey that I have gone through, so this is the way that things are supposed to be done. But I think all of us have a duty to make things better for the younger generation and for our junior lawyers. I think at the end of the day, what we should do is to empower them by giving them the power of choice. If you're in a senior position of leadership, I think what we can do is to listen to what the juniors want. We shouldn't judge them. If they want to take on more of family time, and we shouldn't judge them and think that they don't want their careers bad enough. So I think that is the kind of support that the juniors really need. If we can encourage that, if we can listen to that, it will make things a lot easier for them.
Yeah, I think it's very true. I think many industries, this thing about not spending enough time at work, does it really mean that you don't want that career progression bad enough? And that's just one of the biases that I think many of us are also trying to break as females. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, that's right. And I think that nowadays a lot of fathers would like to take on a greater role, and a lot of men as well. They have different responsibilities. They have to look after their parents. They have children. And we should not confine these responsibilities to genders. Mm-hmm. So we should recognize that both women and men, they do have different priorities now. And I think what we can do is to give them the space and the scope to make the choices that they want.
Yeah, that's really enlightening, giving them the space and the scope to make choices that fit their lifestyle. Thanks, Sharon. I want to come to you too, Wen-Hui, because in the hospitality industry, we've had reports showing that men are 10 times more likely to be promoted to positions of the president or partner level. And one of the latest reports in 2020 showed that leadership positions in hospitality are right now only 25% are occupied by females. I wanted to ask you whether you've encountered gender prejudice in your role at work, and if so, how did you overcome it?
Sure, I definitely agree with that. In hospitality, actually more than 50% of the workforce are filled by female positions. Unfortunately, gender equality is still an overarching problem that is pan-regions, cultures, and countries. Now, in my role as a hotel developer, I often deal with clients from other Asian countries, and in some countries like Japan and in Korea, the workforce is still very much intrinsically skewed towards the female population, and that for that reason, traditional gender roles pretty much still prevail to a very large extent. When I deal with clients from these countries, a lot of times when they speak to me, they feel that I lack credibility, not because I have proven otherwise, but simply because age works against you, gender works against you.
It's like a double whammy.
Correct, yes, which makes it really tough for them to gain that trust in you. Having said that, I try not to take it personally, and I don't entirely blame them for that, because it's often shaped by their culture norms, it's shaped by their societal practices, and how they behave, what they believe in is so heavily impacted by their environment and upbringing as well. It's just the way that they're so used to viewing certain things, right? So once you have cast that aside, then the fundamental thing is about building trust. How do you build trust? That's through credibility and integrity. I strongly believe in integrity. So as long as you stay true to your work ethics, you show and prove that you can deliver value and results to them, eventually these preconceived notions would slowly fall apart, and eventually you find that you're able to build a healthy relationship and a very respectful relationship towards each other.
Some great words of advice there. Don't take it personally. That's quite hard though sometimes. And as well as to take the steps to establish integrity, credibility, so that there's trust, right, for that relationship to continue to grow and evolve. Thank you, Wen-Hui. Eric, coming to you now. Welcome again.
Thank you.
So happy to have a male ally in our midst today.
Yeah.
You know, there's this commonly held belief too that men make better doctors and women may be more suited to the nursing role. I wanted to ask you what you've personally observed and what sort of progress you've seen in gender equality in the medical field.
Sure, thank you. To answer that, I think we head back to some 3 decades back when I entered medical school. And at that point in time, the selection criteria was very clear. On a class of, say, 200, there would be an arbitrary limit of 2 boys to 1 girl. And this was very much built on the notion that, you know, when it comes to active duty further down the road, some ladies may cut back on the time they can commit to full-time doctoring to tend to the family, for example. I think over the years this has changed, and my understanding is that it has now reached equality in terms of gender in medical school admission. So
Awesome.
in that respect, progress has happened. The healthcare industry in the nursing tier is generally a female-dominated one. And to understand that, the reasons are clear. I think females generally have the gentler touch in the nursing setting. And traditionally, it's also been a place where males are disfavored joining the nursing industry. On a more practical aspect, you know, as a male doctor, when we see patients, female patients, we will need the attendance of a female chaperone for patient safety. And therefore, if we were to have a team of male doctors assisted by male nurses, then in that clinic or in that hospital ward, we can only tend to male patients. So I think on a very practical manner, we will need equality, we need the female nurses, and therefore they are suitably represented. Yeah. So I think all in all, over the years, progress has happened.
Yeah, that's very encouraging to know. Thank you, Dr. Eric. I want to bring Rachel into the conversation too, coming from the retail space. You know, the landscape in which you founded Love Bonito is very different from your current operating environment. What do you think has changed for young female entrepreneurs in the retail space?
Yeah. I think when we first started, that was about 15 years ago, right? Back then was really in the nascent stages of entrepreneurship. And back then, I know, as my fellow panelists has also shared, I think we were young, we were women, so you have 2 things working against you. A lot of business partners that we reached out to back then, whether it's factories or last mile delivery partner, they would not take us seriously because, you know, firstly, you're young, you're a woman. And I think back then in the early days as well, firstly, entrepreneurship isn't like what it is today. It isn't as common.
Yeah.
And secondly as well, you don't really have much role models that you can look up to and learn from. And a lot of times, right, back then, you know, you have media glamorized leaders like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, who are mainly men as well. So it's very hard for us to also, you know, follow in someone else's footsteps. So what we did was we really had to carve, you know, our own path and, you know, learn by our own mistakes and doors that were closed on us, literally. We had to find other ways to make the business work as well. So I think those were really the early days, and I think as the years has gone by, you see today there's a lot more representation in terms of women in leadership, women being entrepreneurs, women being business leaders as well. So yeah, I think it's been a long journey. Very tenuous as well, but I think over the years it's also really made us who we are today, to be a lot more gritty, tenacious, and I think you don't have a choice but to really believe in yourself when everyone else around you choose to, you know.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that because
Yeah.
you said there were so many doors that were slammed in your face, right? And you were young, female. It would have been so easy to give up. So what was the mental self-talk that you told yourself, like dogged pursuit, like I'm better than this? What was it?
I think it was a lot of firstly recognizing what the limiting beliefs were. And I think back then in the retail space, whether it's online or offline, I think a lot of times there were a lot of already traditionally set ways. For example, how delivery packages were delivered and mailed. Back then, you only had one monopoly player, which is SingPost, right? And you know, with a lot of doors closed on us in terms of the way we would evolve and rethink delivering packages. It was also a lot of sounding out with friends and people, talking to them, and one of them happened to be Chang Wen, who eventually started also Ninja Van. So I think it's a lot of like, you know, talking, sounding out, brainstorming together, and not taking no for an answer was really key for us. Also being adamant and stubborn to a certain extent of believing that there must be another way we can do things. Yeah, so I think a lot of that, recognizing firstly what your limiting beliefs are, and then, you know, finding other ways through different people that we could speak to who would take a chance and make something work together with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's about being brave and also thick-skinned enough to keep asking questions and just saying there must be, I can do this in another way, a better way, isn't it? Now, I want to circle back to Sharon, and this is my next question I want to ask each of you. You've shared some of your observations about gender biases in your various industries. Let's talk about what we can do, right? There's so much talk about, to promote more gender equality, there should be collaboration between private and public sectors. Is it about that, or is it about top management driving change? So Sharon, what do you think it is when it comes down to the crux of it, right? Is it education that starts from home, or do you need top management driving change?
I think that we need all of these. They are all different aspects, and we can't do without any single one of it. So I think that if we look at it from a management perspective, whether you're managing the entire organization or you're just managing a team, it's very important to have diversity, not just gender-wise, but diversity in every form. Because I think that different upbringing, different exposures to various cultures will naturally give you a different perspective. I'm sure all of us here, we would have different views, different angles on a problem. And to me, that is extremely valuable. And I think once we can make a business case for diversity, it will naturally promote gender equality as well.
I like that, because the diversity is actually a lot more all-encompassing.
Yes.
So promoting diversity, and then gender equality is just one of the facets of that, right? Where there'll be perhaps more open-mindedness towards that issue as well.
Yes, that's right. So while we are thinking of how we can improve equality for women, we should also think about our own privileges and how we can, in other situations, we might be the majority, we might be the stronger voice. So we can also think of how to uplift the minority to promote more diversity.
Yeah, you know that tagline, right? When women empower, when women support women, great things happen. Don't worry, Eric, don't feel left out. Okay, you are our friend here today. One way, in hospitality too, there are more reports now saying that there is a higher percentage of men and women believe that women entering hospitality companies today have more opportunities to climb up to leadership positions. I wanted to ask you whether you've encountered perhaps some best practices in other countries that you admired, which you think could be applied to Singapore, or perhaps do you think for women to rise to the top, it goes beyond just mere changing of corporate policies?
I think that in Singapore we have a pretty good base to work off. As you can see, in the past few years, there has been a lot of positive policies that have increased the participation of female in the workplace. And if you look at the countries across globally and also even within Asia, there are a lot of quotas, policies, initiatives, awards and achievements that's trying to foster gender equality and to ensure that females are well represented on the board. Having said that, I do think that it really goes beyond the corporate policies, right? Because when you look at these awards and rewards, these awards and recognition, sometimes large corporations focus too much solely on achieving these matrices. And what happens is that tends to result in them being confined to a very tight framework in the way that they think. But you could be achieving a certain diversity award, or you could be awarded a world's best workplace. You might still not be fully aware of whatever's happening on the ground. And that's where I agree with what Sharon had shared, that diversity is important and we need to be empathetic. We need to be aware of the diverse voices that are on the ground. So in that regard, I think what really helps is having a solid and genuine platform for women to step out and to speak up. This could be through the forms of forums, support groups, go-to contact points within the companies where women can voice their concerns on gender barriers, gender biases very freely and comfortably without the fear of feeling judged or even penalized, right? And to your point, I actually really do believe in women supporting women, because when you have an avenue like that, you can always bounce off ideas with other people and you realize that, hey, you know what, I'm not alone. And it's different. We might be from different cultures, we might be from different upbringings, but we might share similar experiences, right? So to my earlier point on the experiences that I have had in Japan and Korea, I think there's another misconception that we have, that these usually occur only in relatively traditional countries, but in my experience in more mature markets like Australia, it's pretty much the same. You step into a conference room and you see that it's filled with majority male representation. It's hard to strike up a conversation. So if you have these little forums and support groups, I think it would allow women to speak up a lot more. And apart from that, the other two factors which I think are very important is education and the belief and the upbringing that parents should instill in their kids from young, because having the confidence and the belief that you are capable of rising to the top should be a norm rather than an exception.
Education, upbringing, so important, moving away from mattresses and providing resources for women to speak up and through available platforms. And I think I agree that the network that you have with other women, that is so, so valuable. Thank you, Wen-Hui. Dr. Eric, from a micro lens then, how exactly is MinMed run? And also from a macro perspective, how would you suggest we do more to champion women as leaders in your field?
Okay. Well, we are 20 years old this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And very interestingly, apart from the core management team is female.
Oh.
And certainly this didn't happen by way of construct or design, simply because in the private enterprise space, it's all about fruitfulness, and a good tree bears good fruit. And it is not respective of gender in the process. So at the end of the day, it is about the best person for the job and what the person can bring, which will be a factor of his or her capacities, his or her intellect, as well as his or her leadership. So, and particularly in the area of leadership, it toys around with this thing called emotional quotient, about being able to understand people, being able to relate and inspire and nurture them. And in that respect, if you look at the gentleman, sometimes we solve problems very practically.
Yeah, my husband does. Yeah. Through that very black or white lens, that's it, right?
Yes,
No
it's quite dichotomous in our thinking and in our actions. And therefore, I think in this particular aspect, sometimes the lady does hold the better edge. Yeah. So when it comes down to what practical things that can happen in the gender equality space, I think it really comes down to the society hearing more about people who are successful, the women leaders and where they are, through real life stories of how they overcome, how they do what they can do as leaders in that space, and also do so in a balanced manner as a wife and as a mother at the same time. I think that if we can hear and have more stories to inspire, I'm sure it will go a long way in getting everybody to be suitably more confident. Yeah.
Sometimes it really is about empathy, and I totally agree with your point about representation, celebrating the women who are able to juggle these roles, but also having a balanced view that we want to celebrate their successes as well as their failures, and to let other females know too that it is okay to fail and to climb back up, right? Thanks, Dr. Eric. Rachel, at Love Bonito, I love the fact that 70% of your leadership roles are occupied by females, and also 70% of STEM roles, now that is so interesting, also occupied by females. How else is Love Bonito empowering women both from within and outside your organization?
Yeah, I think for us in Love Bonito, we truly believe in empowering women and standing for women, right? And we lead by example as much as we can, especially when we talk about internally, right? I think we really take a lot of intention and effort to groom from within. So for example, when you talk about leadership roles, right? I think also being conscious that, hey, for women generally, and this is also maybe from my experience, we tend to not, raise our hands to ask for promotions or pay increment as much as maybe the men would. And I think for us, it's also really grooming that out of them, sitting them down and working out a personal development plan for each of them to chart out, what their progression goals are, what their development areas are, and work towards it together with each and every one of them. And I think the other thing also is, really just being open and accessible and available to them. That's one, through our town hall, Ask Us Anything. The other thing is, we have open door sessions, especially with my CEO, Dion. You can come to her, ask her, how her career growth has been, how it's been for her working her way up all the way to becoming a CEO at this stage, at this age. Things like that has also been really helpful for the organization to learn and grow from. And I think outside of, what we do within the company, I think in Love Bonito, we really believe in empowering women. And fashion is just a vehicle for us to reach out to women at the end of the day. I truly believe, and I have been someone who has also been impacted by really owning and embracing who I am. Why am I not taller, longer legs, slimmer, everything? Right? We've gone through that. Why don't I look like her? But I realize that when you embrace and own who you are, that's when you start to really be more confident in who you are. And so dressing up plays a huge part in our everyday lives. We learn that when you dress up, you look good, you feel good. You stand a little taller, you speak a little louder, and you shine a little brighter. And it really starts there, owning who you are and really dressing for who you are. So that's how we want, that's our gateway into reaching out to women as well. And I think in the next coming years, we're also excited to see, with the influence and impact that we have built over the last decade, how can we use that to further serve the community in Asia, especially, and also to the underprivileged communities in our part of the world as well. So we have a social impact program called LB Create, where we would very intentionally also give back to communities through donations, education, supporting them through whatever help that they need, and coming on board to really be an ally in helping women starting from a younger age all the way to a much older age as well. So I think that's what we really are committed and are passionate about, making a difference in the world.
That's so nice to hear. When you dress up, you feel good, you look good, you stand a little taller. I see the lady smile. I see Eric smiling too. 100% with you on that one, Rachel.
I'm waiting patiently for the men's slide.
On a more personal note now, I want to ask each of you what you would do to personally advocate for gender equality. And I know for Sharon, mentorship is very big to you. What role does it play in perhaps encouraging women to initiate the change that they want to see?
So like Rachel mentioned earlier, it's very important to be open. And I think that while it is very scary to show your vulnerabilities very openly to people, it is very important. It's a very important aspect of mentorship, because if you hide your struggles and you just show the glamorous side to your mentees, then I think that really defeats the point of mentorship. What people want to see is to understand the journey that you are going through, the difficulties that you have struggled with, and how you overcome it. And I think that, like for example, from my experience, drawing on my own experience as a litigator, everybody has different styles in the courtroom. But if you only have one sort of example, which is the stereotypical aggressive male lawyer.
See, I have that stereotype already. Aggressive male lawyer.
Yeah, so then people who, ladies who want to go into this field, they might feel constrained because they might feel this is not me. So how do I become a good litigator if I'm not like that, right? So they need to see more examples of people who are successful. You need to find a way to express yourself in your chosen field in a way that is most authentic to yourself. I think that's the only way you can achieve anything out of it. So that, I think industry-wise, I think that is very important. Personally, I think that finding mentors outside of your industry is also very, very important. It can give you a very enlightening shift in your perspective. So I have been benefiting from Winnie's mentorship from a long time ago. And I think that mentorship doesn't have to be a very formal thing like, can you be my mentor? I'm going to join this program. It doesn't have to be that way. You can approach anybody that you admire. And sometimes it's very helpful to just have that sounding board, especially if a person is outside of the industry and you limiting beliefs, right? You have these limiting beliefs and somebody outside say, but why do you think that way? Why can't it be done? And sometimes all it takes is just that little bit of a reminder and that different perspective that can make all the difference.
So that mindset shift, right? Yeah, great words of advice. I really like that. Sometimes mentorship can be very informal, and look out for someone who is outside of your industry to bring a different perspective. Thank you, Sharon. Wenhui, speaking of mindset shifts, what would you like to shift in this ongoing conversation about gender equality?
So I think that to make a change to breaking gender biases, we definitely need a paradigm shift in how we change the way of thinking. And two key behaviors that I really think that we should be aware of is firstly sensitivity to culture, and the next would be in providing resources. I say that from my experiences having met and interacted with women of different cultures. I think in Singapore we are rather privileged that we do have a good base of education and also access to many, many different career opportunities. But when I meet with, for instance, team members from Indonesia, I learned that apart from working, they have to serve their families, and on top of that, they have community duties that they have to dutifully and consistently do in their villages, right? And this is a real commitment and obligation. And that's not going to change within the next 5 to 10 years, right? We just need to be honest that sometimes that's just how it is set up within their culture. Or even in Sri Lanka, where team members tell me that just to apply for a job, they have to fight with their family because for women in their culture, they should not be out working, they should stay at home and serve the families. So while I completely agree that diversity and equality are both very important, I think we also need to be aware that everyone has a different setup in upbringing and in their environment, right? So in that sense, we need to be cognizant of all these differences and the various circumstances that women are placed in. And it's really about mindfully then giving them the right resources to achieve the most equal outcome as much as we can, and a win-win situation. This to me is equity, which is inherently different from equality. But I would say that it is as important, if not even more important, because the truth is, like all of us had shared earlier, everyone has different priorities, right? It doesn't mean that a woman needs to stay home to take care of the family. Even in Singapore, if your husband decides that he wants to be a stay-at-home dad, why not? So it's really all about looking at how you work it out with your support system and structure around you.
Championing equity and being sensitive to culture. Thank you, Wenhui. Dr. Eric, I heard you going, yep, and nodding emphatically to what Wenhui say. What do you do on a personal level to advocate for more equality among gender?
So on what I can, as a practical person in the space of what we can do to approach gender inequality, I recently read and felt that the issue of the gender pay gap is still oddly very prevalent, and this took me by surprise. So in the enterprise setting, I think we can all afford to do more as leaders as well as executives in our own right. I think when we run enterprises, the compensation committee should perform fairly and take in place a person's quality and ensure that there should be uniformity in the way compensation is exacted. And in all things, for practical measures, we can, of course, ensure suitable female representation in the committee, or even place it in the hands of one, so that this thing called gender pay gap can be taken care of over time, and it should not be.
Yeah, I'm very glad you brought this up, because the disparity in pay among gender is pretty prevalent through many industries, and this is something that I think we should pay a lot more attention to. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up today. So Rachel, one of the taglines of Love Bonito, we exist for the modern, everyday Asian woman. I really like that one. I mean, when it comes down to it, how exactly does fashion help foster more confidence in females, you think?
Yeah, I think we believe that the modern woman today, she is multifaceted. You know, we wear many hats. We're not just a mom, or we're not just a daughter or a wife. You know, we have many different roles that we want to play and many dreams that we want to pursue. And I think for us in Love Bonito, ultimately at the end of the day, we want women to believe in who she is. And I think, you know, society over the last few years, especially with the rise of social media and everything, it's caused us to view success in a certain way. In order to be successful, I must be like her, I must do this, I must achieve that. But I really believe that all of us are created for a unique purpose with very unique strengths and DNA, just like our fingerprint. And success for you and I, you know, we look very differently, and there's no one that's better than the other. It's just really about owning all of who we are, embracing who we are, walking our path, blooming where we're planted. And I think one thing, you know, that, you know, I myself also struggle with is really comparing myself to others. How can I be more intentional in focusing on my journey, growing, evolving, and supporting other women along the way? And I think through Love Bonito, in our mission to really empower women, first and foremost through fashion, you know, through the products that we really thoughtfully and lovingly create for women, so that when she puts that armor on, you know, she understands and she owns and embraces all of who she is, so that she can go out there to the world to fight her battles, you know, and win her war. So I think for us, we also want to be able to use the influence that we have had to also shine the light on different women, different stories that have come along the way, who have also succeeded in their own right, and really showing at the end of the day that success can look so differently for all of us. And I think one quote that I hold true to in my journey is by this American philosopher, where he says that the greatest accomplishment in life, you know, is at the end of the day being who you are in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else. So I think, and we hope that, you know, this serves as a reminder, be it, you know, through our brand story, our stories individually as well, that all of us are meant to succeed differently. We all have a unique destiny, and that's really what we want women to understand ultimately at the end of the day.
Yeah, this reminds me of this quote where it says, there is no greater superpower than being yourself. And I like how you highlighted that your clothes are not just fashion pieces, but rather an armor that a woman can put on before she goes out to face her battles. That is so poignant. Thank you, Rachel. Now, very quickly, I want to just wrap up our conversation today, and to get some parting words from you. You know, one key word or thing that you'd do, Sharon, to promote gender equality tomorrow, what would it be?
Okay, so I think that what struck me about Wen Hui's sharing earlier was she mentioned we cannot just look at like awards and things like that. So I think that while trending practices can be a good guideline, we need to actually be more thoughtful and think beyond what people have came up with. Like what Dr. Eric shared as well about his experience working with his team. Everybody is different, everybody brings different things to the table. So I think while this kind of dialogue is of course very, very important, I hope to be able to go beyond that and from a day-to-day basis to really listen and to consciously think of what the team needs and what they want, and to address that. So what the kind of support that we need to give them is the support of what they want to achieve in their lives. And I think that is the concrete action that we can take on a daily basis, a concrete reminder that we have to tell ourselves. We have to be very intentional about that, especially when we are in a leadership position and we need to look after our team members.
So that is more than one word, yes, but it is a concrete action, concrete step to take. So listening to the needs of your team and providing the support that they require. Right. Thank you, Sharon. Wen-Hui, what would you do today to break the bias?
I think that awareness and acknowledgement is a very good first step, right? Even though we hear a lot about equality, but there are very few people who even acknowledge it once you get sucked into the hustle and bustle of life. So, you know, I really like what Sharon had pointed out, that it's okay to fail, it's okay to not have certain priorities which everyone else has the same. It's okay that on certain days you feel vulnerable and inadequate, and so I think it's important for myself to speak up to other women around me. Well, actually not just women, but male and female alike, right? Because at the end of the day, maintaining that open and honest communication is key. Like I said about equity, everyone has a different setup. So how do you concur and divide to achieve the best win-win situation you can with your colleagues, with your boss, with your spouse, and with your family structure?
Thank you, Wen-Hui. So acknowledging and speaking up. That's very nice. Thank you. To our male ally today, yes, what parting words do you have for us in terms of an action you take to promote gender equality tomorrow?
I think my thoughts are simpler. That well, we are
short and sweet.
Generally, yeah. I think to do that, share the housework at home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, my husband does more of the housework.
Yeah. All too often, we have a meal and then we leave it to the lady to clear up, and she does the laundry, she does the housekeeping, and where we all start off as couples being equal when we were fresh and young. I think that changes over the years. So I think if we can keep an eye on this and try to make sure that, through the space of time, we continue to have equality and equity in the workload at home, be it looking after the children or running the chores, then I think in small steps, when you behave that way on a personal level, you carry it into the space that you go into, in the community, in the workplaces, and with people whom you mix around with. So I think simple, small steps. Do your dishes, guys.
Yeah. Share the load. I hope our male viewers today are also taking notes. Very useful tips there. Rachel, what would you do then to break the bias today?
Yeah, I really believe that we're not meant to go through life alone. And I think through what we do, I really hope to continue to build a community where, number one, women are seen and heard, and number two, where they're supported, where it gives them that space that they can learn from and grow with other women as well. And I think that to me is what life is all about.
So building a community around women and giving them the support they need.
Yeah, and allowing them to be seen and heard. I think that's super key for empowering someone to take that next step and the next step.
I really like that too. Thank you so much to each of you for sharing your personal stories and observations about gender bias. To promote gender equality, if I could quickly summarize, we have some great takeaways from each of you today. From Sharon, it's about listening to the needs of your peers, providing them the support they need. From Wen-Hui, it's about acknowledgement and speaking up. From Dr. Eric, do the dishes, share the load throughout the passage of time, gentlemen. And for Rachel, it is about allowing women to be seen and heard and to feel supported as well. So thank you so much, everyone. I do hope that from our panel discussion today, we too have the courage to speak up and to initiate the change that we want to see and to break that bias. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.